blow up your comfort bubble because life begins at the end of your comfort bubble. Plan for about 60%, and the other 40% you're going to figure out along the way. And the end result is just life-changing and magical.
This podcast encourages and empowers you to create your own unique real story, develop your own unique real statement, and discover your own unique real self. The power is yours. Good afternoon. Todd Nevins. Previously, episode 1308 of the 12-Minute Convos podcast. It's been just 2 years, 3 months, and 21 hours since we last recorded that conversation. That was then. This is now. Todd, how are you doing today?
Angel, I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me back on.
Yeah, definitely a pleasure. You know, Todd, sometimes when I look at the timelines between episode numbers, it doesn't add up to me. And I just realized, because I interviewed someone that was like 1600 and it was around the same timeline. It's really intriguing how quickly that went by. I wonder sometimes, who was that guy? Now, you are a podcaster, right? Well, this is when we last spoke, right? So you were doing the full-time traveling, right? Set up a podcast out of Austin, Texas, and it really changed your life, transformed your life. What's the update? How have things evolved?
Massively. Yes, we were living in Austin, Texas. I had started my podcast. I was about a year and a half in. I went for over 2 years, 103 episodes, which is nothing compared to what you've accomplished, which is just I'm in awe of. But I was also focused in on building my Google AdWords agency. And so that was what I was doing then. Would you like for me to fast track the last couple of years?
Give us it. Yeah. So the ads agency was CLICKPlacement, right? Mm-hmm. That's the one thing. And the name of the podcast was Go Hunt Life. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, and I teased this in our conversation back then. We blew up our comfort bubbles again in Austin, Texas, that we had created over 2 years of living there. We sold everything that would not fit into our SUV, and in March of 2018, so coming up on 2 years, we drove back across the border into Mexico. Wow. And we have been living in a new city every 1 to 3 months over the last almost 2 years, completely living out of Airbnbs and exploring new cities every few months. And it has been unbelievably incredible.
Hey, I need to interview your wife, right? Because this is a one-sided conversation, right? I need to hear where she is in her mind and what she's thinking, if she allows me to, right? So please tell her she is invited, and if she is willing, I'd love to speak with her. So from your perspective, what's going on with her? Like, what's going on in her mind with everything you guys come up with?
She is thrilled. We're having the time of our lives, and I have sunsetted my podcast for a couple of different reasons. Once we got back into Mexico, we were actually then living the go hunt lifestyle and mentality, and I used it as an opportunity to just focus in on building my AdWords agency. So every day it was pretty difficult to split my time in Austin between building my podcast and building my ads agency, and I did it, but it took every hour of the day, on weekends, as you know, everything. And so once we got back into living a weird digital nomad lifestyle, I made the decision to focus 100% of my efforts on building my Google Ads agency. But we had implemented what we had learned from the podcast and all of the people that we had spoken to, and then what I had learned as far as creating content. And I have helped my wife launch a Mexico-specific blog for her business. And what she does, and I have assisted in that, is we dive really deep into different aspects of Mexico that complement her business.
Oh, that's great. Now, the part of her business is exactly what?
Her business is Tex-Mex fun stuff. She buys handmade products from Mexico that are very specific to Mexico. The papel picado, which are the colorful banners that hang across the streets. If you've seen the Coco movie, that's full of papel picado, the different hand-punched flags that hang along the streets, and also paper piñatas.
Wow.
So she has dug into those two markets. And so we build content, blog content around the history of Pelpicado, the history of piñatas. But then there are also themes within these products like sombreros, mariachis, La Loteria, Lucha Libre, Cinco de Mayo, Three Kings Day, all of those different aspects of Mexico. We dive really, really deep into those areas and publish them up, and it cross promotes her business and the products within her company.
That's amazing. So how do you feel like when you look back, given the podcast the opportunity to reflect on that first decision to get out there and now coming out again? How does it make you feel when you look at it?
Incredible. We had talked about this the last time we spoke, is that I felt like I created the podcast to get a master's degree on the next phase of our lives. And once we started learning all of these different tips and tricks from these digital nomads around the world, we started implementing them. But while we were still in our comfort bubble in Austin, we started implementing these things, and then we executed and sold everything and drove back into Mexico and have been living nomadically in Airbnbs, and I've been working out of co-working spaces. So my daily responsibilities haven't changed, but now we are living what we had learned through the podcast.
It's amazing how many things you do not need, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it is amazing. We only have the things that we really, really need. We don't collect heirlooms or collect like artwork or large bulky things or breakable things. It's just our core stuff. You know, the clothing, the suitcases, the laptops, and the things that keep our businesses going. That's what we have in our car.
When we started our journey, we had people that were offering us things. And of course, we were accepting them because it's the good thing, right? It's a kind gesture, right?
Right.
And so we did the East Coast, got up to Maine, and it was too many things. Like, there's not enough space in a vehicle to carry stuff, right? So I definitely know how that goes, but the memories that you both have now carried, I can imagine the conversations that you can put down if you were to do a podcast again. Is that something that's on the horizon?
We've talked about it. You know how much time it takes to do it properly. And I followed your journey through the United States and thought it was just amazing, but you nailed it. It's easier for us to not buy things that we know we won't use and we do not need. But people are kind and they want to buy you gifts and give you things to commemorate events or a stay with them. And those, it's a little bit difficult because you don't want to be rude. It's the polite thing to accept those gifts. But after a year or two of, luckily our closer friends now, I mean, they certainly realize and appreciate our lifestyle, and none of that happens anymore.
It's challenging. Now, is that a principle, though, that applies to the marital side of your life, where what needs to be focused on gets focus? Because both of you are running businesses, and of course, you're not at home, in air quotes, right? You're not at home at any one time, and you're constantly moving. Has that helped the relationship as well?
It has, because we band together, and it is incredibly exciting when we are leaving a city and what we've accomplished there, and we reflect on the people that we've met and our friends that we now have there, or whatever the situation is. But we've got everything in our car and we're driving away from this Airbnb for probably the last time, and we're driving to a new city that we have never been to before. That is incredibly exciting. Now, granted, we're knocking off a lot of cities in Mexico, so we've been to a lot of them now, but it is really, really fun to see what's going to happen. And we've got a routine. We are home wherever we are living. When we land into a new city, we've got a routine, and we unpack and we get settled and we put our things away, and we've got, different things that we put up. We do have a couple of hanging things, like decorative things that just we carry with us. And then I've already figured out like where the co-working space was. I already have an appointment with the co-working space the next business day. We just follow our same system.
The physical side of you, one of your focuses was being fit, right? How are you managing that while you're over there?
I continued, and so I even expanded it out to climbing mountains here in Mexico. Believe it or not, there are multiple mountains over 4,000 meters high, over 14,000 feet. And I actually tore my meniscus and had cartilage damage in my knee a year ago. So I had to go through and have surgery in Guadalajara on my knee last March. That required a month on crutches. And then I just implemented that mentality into first rehabilitation and then training, and I went back and finally summited the mountain, which is 4,400 meters, about 14,450 feet. I summited that mountain in November, the one that I had torn my meniscus on a year before and had surgery 9 months before. I was on top of that thing in November.
There's a voice that we hear as humans, a voice that urges us to do something. And of course, the other voice in the background says, no, you should not. How do you define that voice? And how do you ensure that you're listening to the right voice in the midst of everything you're doing?
I think that voice changes over time. And I think injuries should be recognized two ways. Number one, it's your body telling you something. So to slow down or alter what you're doing. Number two, I did use it as motivation. I mean, that's no joke that 9 months later I was on top of that thing. Like that motivated me through not only the rehabilitation, but the motivation to get back in even better shape than I was a year ago, to make sure that I didn't injure myself again or injure the same knee. I knew that I was not going to go through that. But then, you know what? I also recognized the fact that I'm not going to be the guy hanging off the side of the mountain with a rope attached around me that if I fall, hopefully the rope is going to catch me. Like, I don't have an interest in doing that. But these long, beautiful hikes where you're not going to, endanger yourself or others around you, I'm all in on those. But there is a limit.
Todd, it's an absolute inspirational opportunity and motivational to touch by, say, Todd, are you doing what you said you were going to be doing? And to hear that you've not given up in the midst of all of the things that happened, right? Torn meniscus, I heard it's one of the most painful things, right, that you can go through the surgery. But to see all of that and to know that you have continued and your wife is still there, that's always great as well, right?
That's the most important part, yes.
Yeah, so again, well done, my friend. Thanks for your service to humanity. In closing, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
No, you asked me this earlier, like, blow up your comfort bubble, because life begins at the end of your comfort bubble. And we've had the luxury of doing that 2 significant times in our life. And on the other side of it, you don't know what is on the other side of it, but plan for about 60%, and the other 40% you're going to figure out along the way. And the end result is just life-changing and magical.
There we go. Again, he has that Nev in his last name because he has not given up. Never give up, amazing audience. Never. Todd Nevins, thank you for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. This podcast is produced by Pod Edits. Visit podedits.com for professional podcast publishing.